Well, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And in today's episode, we're finishing the fuel system and getting the electrical done. You can see that there's some lights working, which means we made quite a bit of progress in today's video, along with a bunch of other odds and ends. So let's get to it. Well, it's time to make some body mounts for the checker, and the way I'm going to go about it, because there's really no aftermarket parts for a car like this, and Tri-5 Chevy ones aren't quite right, and I want solid mounts. I went ahead and got myself a 2.5 inch chunk of bar stock. It's 12 inches long, and this is what's going to make our solid body mount. So I'm going to pick the center, and I'm going to drill through it as far as I can, a 3/8 hole, and then we're going to take it to the bandsaw and slice it to the 3/4 inch body mounts that I need. Well, all right. The first thing we're going to do is grab my fuel cell, and we're going to drop it down in the trunk, because we got to mark it out for the sump of the fuel cell to cut the hole in the floor to let that drop through. So we'll get her set in. I'll bring it closer. We'll make a couple marks so we can cut it out, drop everything flat, and see where we need to mount it before I really get into working on changing one side of the trunk floor here. So let's get to that. Okay. Just kind of get it centered in the trunk here. Sorry if there's a lot of noise. I got the bandsaw going, the heater going. We're working to get some real stuff done, so get this fuel cell kind of where I want it. You see where our feet are landing here. And also being mindful that there is a brain channel down here. So we want to have enough clearance to be able to get my fittings on. So right about there, look centered with the latch and the center of the trunk up there. So I'm going to make a couple marks where the sump falls and where the tank is sitting, giving us a place to start. Now, we flip this up and we'll actually measure this sump before cutting our hole. So let's see what we got for measurements. 6 inches wide, and we're going to go 7 inches deep. Make sure it's 6 inches wide down here as well. So we'll do a 6.5 inch hole by 7 inches deep. So we can go ahead and kind of get this out of the way for now. And we'll make our marks. Doesn't need to be perfect math. So, we'll get the depth wheel out. We're going to cut that out, and then I'm going to come in here with a wire brush and kind of clean everything up. Well, that should work pretty well as far as that hole goes. Now, I'll pull this back out because we got a ton of work to do in here. I just want to get this set up before I start cutting other metal out, so I kind of know where to stop, where to start. So, all right, now that we got our hole cut, we got some of this cleaned up, we need to start working on a couple things. One is this rear body mount location that is kind of non-existent, so we're gonna end up just cutting this out of both sides. But I think first what we're gonna start with is putting a new panel in where this rusty spare tire well is. So we will probably cut this out here, remove some of the seam sealer, and then run our line with our sump here. That's why I cut this hole first, so I'm not like cutting through several layers of sheet metal. And measure it out, and we got a piece of sheet metal that'll cover that up, make this a flatter floor, possibly building up a platform for where our battery's gonna go once we get everything else done. So let's start out with getting this out of here. So we're just gonna cut this spare tire well out first, and then probably take the sheet metal, put it in from the bottom, mark it, cut it, flange it, and get it in. Well, all right, now that we took our little hole and made it a bigger hole in the trunk, we've got this laid out. I've got a jack stand sitting in there with some wood on it. So hopefully I can kind of finagle this sheet of steel in and set it up so I can get some marks. Probably gonna have to pick up the body just a touch, but we'll kind of see where we're at here, because I want to slide it in and get it where we can kind of really ramrod on this thing. So let's see, what can we do? What can we do? Pause. All right, so the first thing, just because I'd lift the body up and slide it under there and all that, but with the lines we got running, and I do have a support under here to hold it up off of the old mounts, I went underneath, I traced it. We're gonna lop the corner off of this side, we're gonna take the corner off of this side, and just kind of keep nibbling away at this panel until it fits what we need. So I'm gonna grab my air shear, and we're going to start fussing this panel. There we go. Now I'll just stack some more stuff up underneath this until it's tight to the bottom of the trunk, we can make our final mark and then cut this piece out. I'm gonna have to move the fuel and battery cable so I can kind of get that slid over a little more. All right. Now, there we go. That general vicinity, we can start making our cut. There we go. So now we can pull our panel back out, trim off the excess, and hopefully it'll fit. I'm not big on the math and the numbers or any of that stuff, but this should give us a decent panel. So all right, we got our new trunk panel cut out. Now we can clean up the edges here and start tacking this in, and then we can move on to our trunk mount. Alright, so instead of endlessly trimming this thing, pulling it in and out, I'm going to tack it in place, and I'm basically going to work it in by using the death wheel to kind of just get everything shaved down where I need it to be. So that way I'm not wasting a bunch of time getting it fitting perfect or overdoing it. And let's face it, we're not going for concourse here, so let's get this tacked. Now with one tack in, I can actually work the panel a little more, getting it right where I want it. So I should go in with the death wheel here and trim this up so we can make this intersection true, and then that'll bring these two together, and also I can use the body hammer to kind of form this all the way around. Okay, now we can throw a couple tacks down this line here, get that trued up, and then work on this, work down here. This is pretty close, but this will work out pretty well because I can actually come in here with a body hammer from the back side and tap it all into meat. So we didn't have to do the most precise cut, but I wanted to give myself enough material to push and pull it to where I need it to be. So we're going to get another tack or so on here. Well, all right, we got our trunk panel in. Like I said, that gap's not going to matter because we're going to end up cutting this section out. You can see where the rotted body mount was. Pressure's going off. Where the rotted body mount was. So we're going to section this part out next on both sides. So probably right here we're going to slice it to meet up. And then right there we're going to slice it. And then we're going to build an actual structure in there to carry the rear body mount. So I'm going to take a quick break, gonna let this metalwork cool down, and then we can start kind of laying out what we're going to do for these mounts. Well, it's time to dig in for the body mount. So I'm going to try and scrape some of the seam sealer up, see what we're dealing with, which that came off pretty easy. So this metal is pretty well shot. So what we're going to do is we'll run the death wheel from here to my patch panel in the floor, cut that, and then follow the line of the panel and cut it back here. We're just going to take this whole corner out. Down here, it's pretty much just going to come away from the trunk wall, because there's a couple areas where the trunk floor isn't exactly attached to the inner fenders. That's not a real concern for me, because the trunk, where it attaches to the rest of the floorboards back here to this structure, is good. So if I set anything in here, it ain't going to go anywhere. There's just going to be some vent holes back here, so to speak, and that stuff that'll be taken care of in the future. But we're just going to hack this out completely, and then I've got some bent, 16 gauge metal that will be building our new structure on. So back with the old death wheel. All right, so we got, this is what's left of the body mount in the trunk. As you can see, she's fairly trashed. Now that we got a nice wide open hole here, I'm going to do a little trimming, get rid of some rotted metal, and we'll start setting up to get our new pieces in. So I'm going to trim some of this, and then we'll figure out how we're going to reassemble it. All right, so I cut out a plate, and what we're going to do to figure out how to mount all this is I got one of my rough body mounts, which, like I said, just that actually 2-inch aluminum bar stock that I'm going to put under my mount and run the bolt through it so we can hold it in place as we do our fabrication here. There we go. There. Now with that tight, we can set up how we want these to go in here. So we can make a straight line, cut it, and then make a mirror one to go here. Of course, flip it around so we can still put our reverse light in there. But that's basically how we're going to build these up here and get them in. Now, like I said earlier, I've got the body supported on the rear cross member of the frame, so this isn't going anywhere. We'll get these solid up, and then I can take that out and lock everything down. So right now, I'm going to cut this, well, mark it, cut it, clean this up here, and we'll get it tacked in. All right, so I come up with a solution for this side. I was just kind of running with an idea. I built a platform that ties the inner fender back to the floor and ties this stamped piece back in with everything. So that's structurally sound. Now the reason why I made it a platform is where the battery box is going to mount. So that'll be nice and solid there. We'll fabricate the hold down. It's just going to be a couple pieces of all thread inside with a bar that pulls it down, and that'll hold that in place. Now, this side is, I'm going to call it complete. It's tack welded in place. It ain't going anywhere. I went in the trunk and I stood on this new panel. I stood on that, jumped up and down. It's not going anywhere. It's going to stay as is, because if I try perfecting this, I'm never going to get the car done. So, battery box goes there. Now on this side, we're not going to get that extravagant because this is pretty well shot. We're just going to make the mount here, and there's enough good metal next to the old gas filler. We're just going to tie it back in with this and pretty much call this side good. Just kind of jam it together and make it work. Future plan, after Power Tour, after I have some fun with this car this summer, is to just cut the trunk out, put new inner fenders in, new trunk floor, just nice new sheet metal, and call it good. But for now, we're just going to kind of hold together this old rusty stuff, get the body mount in so it won't go anywhere. And these aren't super critical mounts back here. There's 3 in there and then like 10 forward. So we just want to keep the back end of the car kind of put on the frame. So I'm going to get to work on this side, and once we get this done, we'll clean the rest of this up. I'll throw some primer at it, and we will mount the fuel cell and finish the line, and probably also put in the battery disconnect and get the cable in yet in this video. So I'm going to keep grinding away on this. So here's where we are for tonight, where we're going to leave her be. We got that body mount done. It doesn't look pretty, but it's very functional. It's tied in. Whatever we can do to cover that hole, put a license plate there, who knows. This side's pretty well buttoned up. We've just got the fuel cell sitting in its hole for right now. I'm going to pull it out and finish cleaning this and hit it with primer, then bolt this down. Then we'll bolt the battery box down and run our cable in for the disconnect switch, which will probably go here. So that's where we're going to leave it tonight. Finally, after, how long a hillbilly machining, we have our aluminum body mounts done. These are 3/4 inch tall, and these will take the 3/8 bolts, how many are holding? 15 of them, and hold the car on. So we've got the actual mounts that'll go in between the frame mount and the body, and then I'm going to take my other piece of bar stock right here, and we're going to do the same thing, except cut these to a 1/2 inch instead of 3/4, and that'll back up the bottom side of the mount on the frame, and then the bolt will go through both up into the body. So that'll be all 15 mounts throughout the car, because there's 2 in the back, 3 here, there's 4 here, 2 here, 4. There's a lot. Let's just say that. So that's where we're going to wrap it up for the night, and probably attack it tomorrow. I got my mess swept up, so we're going to leave her be. Going to relax for a change. Well, another day. We're cutting our 1/2 inch chunks for the lower part of the body mounts right now, and we're going to work on the trunk. I've got it all wire brushed, cleaned out. I've already got my holes drilled for the fuel cell and for the battery hold down. So we should be able to hit the bare metal with some self-etching primer, and that'll protect everything, and this will adhere to it without, all the prep work goes into it. So seeing as this isn't a show quality thing, we're just going to make it so it doesn't flash rust. Well, now that we're waiting for the primer sealer that I laid into the trunk over that self-etching primer to dry, we're going to work on a mount for our disconnect switch. This is effectively going to be the key to my car. Is we have that on, off. You can pull it out so I can take it with me, close that off. I mean, it'll have other keys, but why not have more safety? So, we're going to take this angle aluminum that I've got. We're going to cut a piece out, and then we're going to slot it so I can drop the disconnect down into here and bolt it to it. And the reason why I'm using this instead of just bolting this directly to the panel in the rear is that panel's not really held in with anything. So if I use a piece of angle, I can mount this in there and then mount this to that like rear bulkhead and kind of keep everything solid. So first thing I'm going to do is hijack my bandsaw quick and slice out a chunk, and then we'll notch it. All right, well, we got that mounted in. This panel now is much more solid. It was flapping in the breeze back here, so we killed two birds with one stone, and now we've got our kill switch. There we go. And I got it approximately in the same spot as the old gas filler used to be, which I'll put the filler neck back in just so I can put the cap on it, but there we go. And on the back side here, I trimmed down the nuts so they won't come close to the terminal, so I don't have to worry about that. And then when I put the cables on here, which will wrap up and come to this one, we'll make sure it's locked in and it won't touch anything around here. Maybe put an insulated cap over it as well, so we don't have any problems. But it's direct to the battery, you know, right there, positive terminals on this side of the battery, so a real short cable down, and then our cable coming up, and that's all set. So I am pretty happy with that right there. So on, off. That should work. That should work good. And I don't know how springy this thing's going to be when we're hitting bumps. So hopefully it doesn't just do that going down the road. But what I'll do, if that's a problem, is we'll just flip this whole switch over. That way it has to come up to shut it off, which I might do anyway, just to keep it from wanting to bounce to the off position. But that should work. Well, and even though our primer isn't exactly dry, we'll throw the battery in anyway. See how our hold down setup works here. There we go. Just like that. We'll grab the battery and then grab our hold down. There we go. Get that in there and get our piece. All right. There we go. Couple washers. I don't think the battery's going anywhere, so that locks her down pretty good. I might take a piece of the flat stock and put it up on end and tack it across so it doesn't want to bend. But that's future me's problem. See if we can find the lid and see if we have to clearance it or anything for these studs. Yep, probably gonna have to clearance that. But what I might do to help hold this down is just drill a hole in here, have the stud come up, just have a wing nut on it. So let's, there we go. We got a witness mark in there now. Let's punch a hole through that and see if we can't figure out a fancy hold down. Okay. The back side, pretty much you just kind of jam in, and in front, there we go. And now I can either make like an angled spacer to drop on there or just run a wing nut down, and that will hold our battery cover on, and our cables will come out here and here. So positive to the switch, negative, we'll probably just punch a hole through the floor there, run it right to the frame because that's where the frame is. Well, there we go. The battery hold down is in, the battery's sitting in it, the box is there, we've got our kill switch. Now we could probably drop the fuel cell in and get this bad boy figured out. So let's get the fuel cell in next. There we go. We could get this bolted down, and at least on this side of the trunk we'll be all done, other than I'll probably put a license plate or two over here. But let's get the fuel cell bolted in, and we'll see if we got the time right now to go underneath and just finish the line and get it on there, because it's got two outlets. They're both -10, and they one has a cap like this that I put up on one of the vents, and then I've got an adapter from a -10 to a -6 for our fuel line. So this should be a pretty neat setup. This is a 20-gallon, of course. It's got Bohm in it. It's got a level sending unit, which has two wires that I'll have to figure out what they do. But we do have the wire for the factory gauge. We'll see if that works, and that'll be all set up. So let's get this thing bolted in. Well, there we go. Fits in nice. I've got it bolted down. One thing I'm probably going to do before I finish this up is pull the front bolts out, lift it up, and we'll put a little foam underneath the fuel cell against the floor, maybe a couple pieces of rubber under here. In the back, I'm not too worried about, because the way the trunk floor angles, the fuel cell itself isn't riding on the floor. So if we can insulate it from the steel beneath, we won't run into any issues, at least like trying to vibrate around and wearing a hole in it. So that will be something I address in the future, but we got it locked in. I need to get a rollover vent, and then we'll work on getting the fuel line hooked up. Well, the next thing we're going to do is start reconnecting some of the wiring up here. Mainly to get everything in the front clip working again, because when I originally took the front end off, I had to cut the wires to get it off, and obviously they're not going to be long enough to hook back up to go to a tilt front end like this. So I just took some, actually trailer wiring I had, some flat 4, split it out, and what we're going to do and what I'm going to show you, and what's also my first time really dealing with in a build, is putting in my own Deutsch connectors, or weather packs a lot of people call them, and then that'll give you a weather tight connection between one side of your harness and the other side of your harness. So I've got a 6-port weather pack right here, and I've already put the female end on one side. Now, This side will just, the male end will set off to the side for now. And I've got all my wires at about the same length and stripped. So the first thing you got to do is take these seals that'll go on each individual wire. Try not to have my tools roll away from me. So this is a weather seal that'll seal the wire itself to the connector. And you want to put it with the nipple end facing the end of the wire. You want the flat end facing the wire itself. So get these on. Just slide them down the wire a little bit. You'll be sliding them back up later. Okay, set that up this side. Now, it comes down to your contacts. Now, there's a different contact for which side you use. So, the female side, there's a certain contact, and the male side, there's a certain contact. So, if I'm doing this right, maybe, you have the pin style contact in, well, I guess you could do it either or. Just make sure you have one style of contact in one side and the other in the other side. So I put the hollow pins in my female end, which is probably not right, but it should work. So you got a hollow pin for one side, and then you got the male pin for the other side, like this. So regardless of what side you're doing, they install the same on the wire. So we'll start with our green wire here, and you basically just lay the wire into the connector, kind of where the pin is there. You want to run the wire right up to that, and you're gonna need actual weatherpack crimpers. Your regular crimpers aren't going to do the trick, and they're labeled for what size wire and pin you're using. So the open end that you're going to fold is going to go down where you see the double groove there, because that's what's going to push it down and crimp it. Make sure, give it a good squeeze. And we got a good connection. Then you could slide your seal up, which is what I did on the other ones. Get it in place, kind of squeeze that a little bit, and there's a crimp for the seal end. So just go ahead and crimp your seal to the back of your pin. So I will, I'll kind of bring you in closer to see if I can show you a little better how to do this. So we'll isolate one wire and we'll get in there. So we've got our wire there, focus, kind of. And then we've got our pin. It wants to focus here on something that's not my hand. Yeah, something like that. You see those? There we go. Those two little tabs there. That's what you're going to fold down. So you're going to put the wire in there. Kind of keep it seated to where you just kind of run it up in. And you're going to take your crimpers, and you can see the 2018 is what I'm using for a gauge. And you want the opening of that to be down in this groove, because you could see how it's stepped there. It's going to crimp them together. So it's a little tricky to hold the pin and do this at the same time, but I typically get it started. Make sure it'll stay. And give it a crimp. So there we go. Now, this is the way I've been doing it, but you can slide this seal up beforehand too and get it dropped in to the pin, but I just push it up just like that. And then you got at the top or bottom of your crimper, you've got the seal side there. So same thing, the opening to the bottom here. Then I jump it to the next one just to make sure. And our seal is crimped in place. So I'm going to put the rest of the pins on and we'll get the connector on. Oh, mind the sound of the heater. I got a little cold. So before we put our pins in, we got to open up the back of our connector. So let's get a screwdriver in there to pop one side loose at a time. There we go. And now we want to ensure that we've got our pins in correctly. So now I know my white wires, so that one's going to go in the A slot, and that's where we're going to start our connector. There we go. Got it locked in. Finally, blank. Now, I want to push all my seals in, make sure they're all good. And clip our connector together. Make sure all my pins are lined up. There we go. Now I can loom all this together and get it set up. Alright, so here's the moment of truth. We got the battery in, we got it hooked up, we got our power from the battery to the switch, our cable going from the switch up through a grommet, through the floor, all the way up. I've got it tied into all the power for the car. We've got another lead run to the signal wire for the starter, up to actually a trailer doohickey for testing your trailer wiring to see if we can get signal for the starter and all that. See how many lights we have to fix on this car. But the first thing is, I guess, is flip this switch and hope everything doesn't fry. So nothing's on fire, I don't think. So, here, damn door. There we go. Now, let's see. I don't know if we'll have any lights. Oh, we got something. Nothing's melting down. We got marker lights. We got one headlight. This one's clearly out, I take it. She looks a little foggy. Let's go to the back. We got tail lights. I gotta get a new socket for this one. It's completely rotted. But we've got tail lights. Oh, I need to plug in my license plate light. Give me a second. We got a license plate light. Okay, let's see if the dimmer switch works at all. Oh, look at that. Yep, it was on. It burnt out. So we got both high beams over there. We need both lights on this side. Okay, so shut the headlights off. All right, so we got parking lights. Now do our brake or turn signal work? I don't know if I plugged my brake switch back in or not. All right, so parking lights back on. See if the left turn works. Nice. Does, yep. Sweet. See if the other turn works. Well, we got a left turn signal, but no right turn signal. Let's play with the wiring a little bit. I mean, we got power through the car and, you know, nothing's burning down yet. So, that's our left up there in the cluster. Maybe we got an issue somewhere in the fuse panel. Maybe we got a blown fuse or something. But, yeah, I do not have brake lights, so I do have the switch hooked up, and it is functioning under the dash, but I don't have brake lights yet, so I'm going to work on that. But I am happy that we do have marker lights, headlights, save for some bulbs being out, so I'll just get all new headlights for it. Got one turn signal. I do have all the wiring schematics for this car, so I'm going to go through it and see if we can't bring the turn signals back around. See if we have anything else that works on the key. We'll move our list, see if the windshield wipers still work. I don't think I unplugged them or anything. Yeah. Keys on. Well, them aren't working either. So we've got some work to do. Oh, helps if you turn the key on. Okay, well, those work. We've got some serious grinding and stuff up under the dash, so we'll have to take care of that. The wiper motor is on the inside, and we'll just have to worry about that. But the wipers work at least. We need to figure out brake lights, right turn signal, and get our signal up for the starter. But this has got a funky like starter solenoid switch under hood too, so we'll look into that, because that I have no idea what it really does. So I'm going to continue putzing on the wiring here a little bit, figure out that fuel gauge on how to make it work with the sender I have. And yeah, let's keep going. Well, so clearly I have no idea what's going on, because I just went around there and rooted around in a bunch of stuff, and now we got brake lights, which I don't know. Yeah, we probably got them on both sides, but we've got the right turn signal now. Got it back there. And we got it there. So there's a couple grounds that are not connected under the dash, which I'll connect those, and then everything else should work. I mean, we're getting there. Car still isn't on fire. That's good. We've got the wiring done back here, so everything back here is done wiring wise, other than throwing new bulbs in these side markers. In the car, there's really only a few things I need to work. I need the lights to work, I need the turn signals to work, I need the brake lights to work, and the wipers to work. So all that stuff works right now. I'm just gonna go through there. There's a lot of auxiliary wiring that doesn't need to be in there. I'm gonna clean all that out. I'm gonna simplify the whole thing so it works all the time, every time. So that should get us where we need to be. All right, well, I figured out our right turn signal issue, and that is every light on this car is grounded through its own bucket. So there's no ground wire going from these sockets to anything. So see, quits flashing. We give it a good ground by putting it back on the metal. So once this is fully attached, it'll be properly grounded. We won't have to worry about it. That side's fine. This side just needs that ground for everything to work, so that's not a big deal. So I'm going to shorten a couple harnesses inside the car that we don't need, like that bundle of wires there. That is no good to me as far as having this car run and operate. We've got everything else set to go, and that's good. I'm happy with that. As far as the trigger wire for cranking it, don't really care. Probably going to put a push button in anyway, but everything else works. We've got power where we need it. So I'm going to call that a win as far as wiring goes. We just need to make sure when I mount that tail light on the passenger side back there, that's good. We need to replace the headlights. But as far as everything else goes, all the wiring in this car is now intact, other than figuring out the fuel level sender. It's a 2-wire sender that came with the fuel cell. It's a single wire coming up to the gauge, so might have to get an aftermarket gauge. Who knows? But pretty happy with that. I got my Deutsch connector in here, and as far as taking the front clip off, we could disconnect that, disconnect this ground up here, and everything can come off. I might get a big Deutsch connector for this, but for right now, it's fine. We got our springs on our cables. We've got a lot of stuff pretty much figured out. I got all my body mounts made. I broke another bandsaw blade. So, might just leave it at this for the night. Only thing I have left to do back here is cut the end of that fuel line and get it attached to the sump of the fuel cell, which you can see up there. And I did put foam stripping underneath the fuel cell and around the opening, so it's not directly on the floor of the car. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to put a parts list together. I need a new socket for here. I need a bunch of 194 sockets. I'm just going to replace all of them, both sides and in the front. So we'll have all our marker lights working and everything there. So other than possibly carrying enough to get the cluster working, I mean, I'll have a tack with a light. All my other gauges will have lights. So I really don't have to care too much about the cluster if I ever put a speedometer cable in it. So that just might be a dead set of gauges as far as they might not ever work. I want to get the speedo working, but I'll have to get a cable, get the right gear for inside transmission, all that stuff. But for now, I think I'm gonna call it a night. So the nice thing is, just shut that off, and then if I don't want anyone stealing my car, we just take it with me. So I'm gonna leave this in there for now so I don't lose it. Oh, and I got my reverse lights in too, which probably not gonna do any good because they're not hooked up to anything right now. So I'll have to look at the schematic and see where those go so I could hook them up to the 4-speed, because I believe there's a switch on that. But as far as that goes, this is where I'm going to leave it set for the night. A lot of random stuff going on in this episode. We worked in the trunk. We got that all buttoned up. So we've got the fuel cell secured in, foam underneath it. I'm still waiting on a rollover vent, but that is secured, ready to go. Batteries in. We've got our positive lead going to our cutoff switch. Our ground is going directly to the frame. We've got our cutoff switch right there. Everything's back in, and we did the trunk mounts in the rear, did plates for the forward trunk mounts, and get around here. We'll go underneath and we'll see the new body mounts are in. So we've got new solid body mounts. All of them are in now, so that's done, which is nice. Get tired of rolling around underneath the car. And before I put those new mounts in, what I did was jack the body up, and we put some self-etching primer in where those mounts are going to sit so it won't rust above the mounts. Also, a couple things I did off camera is, well, a lot of wiring up here. These are a couple for the horns. A couple of these are for the old voltage regulator, and this is engine temp. So other than the horn ones, they're going to go away, except for one that's key on power so we can excite the alternator. But we got the clutch master in, which show you here. We got the clutch pedal. I shortened the brake pedal. We got our gauges mounted, which is hardwired for the voltage gauge to when I flip the battery switch on, that tells me volts right away. Cleaned up a lot of the wiring under the dash. That got rid of the old harness there. And these hanging here, these are both, the red and yellow, are power all the time. And this is key on power. So I'm going to leave those hanging there because I'm going to utilize them later. This stuff is for the newer column, the wipers, screws. That's not going to be used. The factory harness plugged into the steering column harness with very little modification, and the starter switch plugged right in. So we got that done. And of course, well, I suppose if I turn the battery switch on, I'll put the clip in of all them lighting up nice. But we got that done. We got our Deutsch connector in here so we can disconnect everything if we take the front clip off. We got the springs in. I put the front shocks on. There's plenty of stuff that I got done in and around this episode. The main focus, of course, was doing the rear. So let's wrap this thing up and see what more we can cross off the list. Well, I've got quite the mess to clean up, but that pretty much wraps up my kind of thrash of projects in this particular episode. I didn't throw a whole lot in there, like me farting with the wiring or the body mounts, because that got pretty boring and I really wanted to focus on what I was doing. But we have power to this car now, so everything's ready to go when the engine goes in. I just have to wire up the fans, which is no problem. We've got plenty of power coming out here to take care of that. So, only thing I have left to do, electrical, is get new headlights and replace one of the sockets in the back. But out of everything that was done in this episode, we've got install the body mounts. We've got trunk mounts done. We got battery cables done. Fuel cell done. Gauges done. Wiring done. And I also fixed the driver's door. So that's quite a few things knocked off. I'm not going to cross off shocks yet because I don't have the rear ones or the shock mounts quite yet. But as you can see, we're getting down there in this list. We're getting really close. And not everything on this list is critical to make it go. There's some beauty stuff like the rockers and all that. But we are getting tremendously closer to getting this thing fired up for the first time. So I measured for a drive shaft so we can get that sent off and get a new drive shaft made. And then I think the next episode is going to be the tear down of the square body for its future project while we poach the small block out of it for this car. So there's a bunch more parts coming, and we'll probably, the next video on this car will be dropping that small block in and quite possibly hearing it run for the first time through these headers and side pipes, which will be a tremendous day to get this thing running, well, with some actual power under the hood versus the old 250 that used to be in here. So there we go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this little bit of, mishmash of an episode of certain projects, but the fuel system's done. The electrical's done. The body mounts are done. We got quite a bit of stuff done. So go ahead and check out the other videos in this playlist. I'll put it up in the corner. And don't forget to follow me on social media at all Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at several different iterations of T.N.T. Garage and Performance. I'll put the links in the description below so I don't have to keep putting them down here. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you know when new videos are coming out, because we're getting dangerously close to getting this project on the road. So that being said, guys, well, remember, until next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.